Hi, I'm Ed Bacon, the rector of All Saints Church, Pasadena. Whoever you are and wherever you find yourself on the journey of faith, I hope that you'll find something here that speaks to you. Welcome.
Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us, your people, in this your place. Amen. My housemate in seminary was also a schoolmate. And one year at Christmas, she gave me the gift of sticky notes. They were a beautiful lavender color, and at the top of every one was printed the following: I do yoga, I drink green tea, I meditate, and I still want to hurt somebody. I'm pretty sure it was feedback, aren't you? Meditation, contemplation, praying with beads, praying without ceasing. There are many ways to pray, and there are even a greater number of motivations for praying. In the end, I believe that most of us pray in hopes of encountering, coming to experience the deep and abiding love and presence of God. Most of us, by adulthood, have let go of the need to become truly Jesus-like, or Buddha-like, or Muhammad-like. But most of us still pray because somewhere in there is a longing for a connection with the Holy of Holies. That phenomenon of divine connection is what we mean when we speak of mysticism. The entire enterprise of cultivating one's inner life, preparing oneself, trying on these habits that we call prayer, so that we can have closeness with God. And the outcomes of that cultivation. So for those of you that actually manage to be nice to people as a result of meditation and prayer, or wiser or sharper, or better parents, or better spouses. The whole enterprise of spiritual cultivation on the inside and the fruits that bears on the outside is what we mean when we talk about mysticism. There's much mystical instruction that's been given over time by spiritual philosophies and religious traditions. Jewish proverbs say, "A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit." The Holy Quran says, "For those who are conscientious, there are gardens in the presence of the Lord, below which rivers flow, and acceptance from God." The Gospel of John says, "Abide in me as I abide in you. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you abide in me, you will bear much fruit." Mystical instruction comes in the form of beautiful poetry. And it leaves me, and I think many of us, longing today for more voices that would speak with such liquid-like suggestions and teaching. It is the fantasy of a silken soul to walk with, who could hypnotize our hearts and make us wise, who could make us survive and keep us strong in a time that sometimes feels relentless, a time in which our eyes and our ears are way too often bombarded with insult. How does it happen that the human manages to pursue mystical union with God in the midst of this messy human existence? As residents of a planet that, as it turns, scientists are just watching these solar flares and ejections that apparently are headed straight for Earth, could totally, although temporarily, disturb our electric grid. And we're just watching, waiting to see if it's going to come at us or if it's going to deviate. We listen to the news and we hear reports about governors of border states forbidding health care dollars, turning back federal health care money for women. It begins to feel at some point as if the only lives that matter anymore are the lives of those persons who have the power to hold the lives of the rest of us in the breach. So why in the world should we expect any mysticism to thrive in the midst of this environment? Well, we can expect that because if we remember accurately, know that Jesus' time was a time of trial. That the apostles, their work was filled with arduous tasks and persecution. Yet Christian disciples are considered by some to have been the first Christian mystics. They were called disciples because, like mystics who came before them, they followed a teacher. And they watched how he prayed, and they tried to pray like him. And they listened to how he taught in synagogue. And they tried to mold their lives to those teachings. They lived in accordance with what Jesus had to say. And like the branches of the vine, they depended on him. Not only for instruction for seeking wisdom, but also instruction for staying alive. While the poetry of Christian mysticism is smooth and seductive, and the way we remember our mystics sometimes is a little bit romantic, the reality of Christian mysticism is actually quite rough and bumpy. It's like the story that you heard told from over there. You know, Philip is just this random guy from Jerusalem. If you are the head of commerce for Ethiopia, Philip is not a very impressive teacher necessarily to you. He's just some random guy who hopped in your chariot. And he's checking you out. There's a strand, a part of Christian mysticism that's highly relational, and that's what makes it messy, because it's person to person. Christian mysticism is like the rector who says across the lawn, I am having a glory check to see you here today. How are you? And he really wants to know. That's the stuff of Christian mysticism. Christian mysticism is like the volunteers who go out in small teams in the remote desert canyons of the American Southwest, and they leave food and water and socks and shoes for people who are walking from south to north. And they call their efforts No More Deaths. Christian mysticism is like the Catholic priest who hangs out with homeboys all day and homegirls all day and talks to them and gives them names and gives them jobs and gives them a father figure and a community that's healthy. Father Greg Boyle tells a story about a homie who shows up in his office for the first time. They'd never met, so he asks the kid, "What's your name?" "Sniper," jeers the young man. Okay, look, Father Boyle had apparently had an experience like this once or twice in the past. I have a feeling you didn't pop out of your mama and she took one look at you and said, "Sniper's the name." The young man relents. "Gonzalez, okay?" "Okay, now, son, some people around here will be willing to call you by your last name, but I'm not down with that. What does your mom call you?" "Cabron." I'm not going to tell you what that means in English. "Son, I'm looking for something like birth certificate quality here." Finally, he gives in, tells his first name, "Napoleon," he says, which is Spanish pronunciation for Napoleon. Wow, says Father Boyle. That is a fine and noble and historic name. But I am almost positive that your mom doesn't use the whole 9 yards. So come on, mijo, what does she call you? Sometimes when she's not mad at me, okay, she calls me Napito. So Napito it would be between Greg and his new friend. And it's this kind of persistent, loving encounter that is the stuff of Christian relational mysticism. God has this uncanny ability to take the messiness of human lives and bring people together, one-on-one, small groups. And in that conversation, if the conversation's authentic and honest, God grafts us, grafts people to God's own fineness. To be a mystical church of the resurrection requires that not only some element of this community sit in meditation or contemplation, or pray intercessory prayers on behalf of the church and others in the world. It means that we take the time to have revealing conversations that draw us inexplicably into the presence of God. In the wee hours of the morning at Episcopal seminaries all over the country, we have a great leader of an Episcopal seminary with us this morning. In the wee hours of the morning, seminarians get together and create Southern Comfort sacraments, or tequila sacraments, or whatever you got sacraments. And while they might be a little competitive in the classroom, it's across from each other as they're sharing a cup that they let down their guard and they start to share stories with each other about how tried their marriages are, or how afraid they are for their future. Leaders of our Galas ministry went away on retreat 2 weekends ago. 24 men and women from our community took their personal stories of brokenness and pain and healing and delight, and they worked them literally into the narrative of the mystical Christ-following tradition. They did skits, they told stories, and encouraged, they told the truth in small groups about what was going on with them. And in those small groups, something mystical happened because they were brave and because they listened to one another. We in this world go through economic crucifixion, legal crucifixion, social crucifixion, medical crucifixion, some of us, some piece of this every day. All manner of human beings in this country are insulted and talked down to and deprived of our dignity and have our own hard-earned money waved in our faces by people who want to withhold it from us. Like migrants on a journey from one nation to the other, more and more we feel like a people marching to daily drills of unnecessary and unacceptable treatment. So we have got to stand up to the powerful voices that would choose to ignore humanity and ignore the reality of our shared human need. The commitment of Christian mysticism is that while the sacred prophets may have vanished from the river or vanished from the party inexplicably, like into thin air, no one among us is ever to be made to be invisible. It took time for the Galas community to drive out there. They had to leave their pets, their spouses, some of them, their homes, maybe their work a day early, to do that funny thing in small groups that turned out to be transformative and mystical. The question is, are we interested and participating in that kind of experience, that kind of phenomenon. You know, the one where you just have a certain quality of conversation with a person or in a group, and because people were honest and they kept it real, everybody left knowing that God had been there. In the season of Eastertide, in the season of the mystical resurrection of the Christ, we're invited to answer when we take time to do it, to connect. There is to behold the experience of being with one another, where the prayerfulness of the listening and the honesty of the speaking has the effect of ripping open space just for a split second so that God is there. Christ is alive. May we search him out. May we find him here. Amen.